Hey folks, it's Nate. Thanks for joining me at the art table again today. Every so often, I like to take a look at trends in comics because I find comics fun and interesting, and I find publishing in general to be fascinating. Now, full disclosure, I did not discover this by myself. My attention was brought to this by Super Eyepatch who did his annual Jump recap video, and I watched that and I learned something very interesting that I want to think about a little bit more myself. And to help me do that, I am sharing my thoughts with you. Now, if you're not familiar with Super Eyepatch or his work, I've linked to his channel and the video in question in the video description. That video is quite long and deals with a number of topics that have nothing to do with what I want to actually discuss. The video in general is about the changes in the magazine Weekly Shonen Jump, which is one of the most successful manga publishers in Japan. As manga is currently dominating not just the Japanese market, but the American market, there are a lot of interesting things to learn from looking at the most dominant magazine in Japan. For the purposes of today's discussion, I want to talk a little bit about the comparison made between Jump Plus and Weekly Jump. Jump Plus is a free online digital magazine that publishes several comics, most of which appear every 2 weeks, as opposed to the comics in Weekly Jump, which appear weekly. Jump Plus is a very new offering from the company that publishes Jump. The oldest of the titles that run in it are about 2 years old. Yet when compared to the titles of comparable age that run in Weekly Shonen Jump, the Jump Plus titles are all selling better. Now, a caveat. When I say they are selling better, I don't mean that they are getting more weekly viewers as they are published on the Jump Plus website or on the Jump app. Rather, it is traditional in Japanese publishing to collect 8 to 12 chapters of an ongoing series and release it in a collected volume known as a takoban. It is the comparison of sales between takobans published by Jump versus Jump Plus where we see this dominance in sales. It is not a comparison between readers of Jump Plus and people who buy Weekly Jump. This is significant because there are reportedly some people who just collect Jump and they save all of their issues and they reread stories and comics they want to reread from Jump itself rather than from takoban. They are apparently about as durable in either format. I don't know if this is actually true or not. It seems a little surprising to me, but it could be true because I've purchased takobans and they're not exactly the most sturdy things on the shelves, even when compared to normal paperbacks. However, sales of Jump versus users of Jump Plus are very hard numbers to come by and very difficult to compare in a meaningful way. Furthermore, as manga has gone international, overseas sales have become more and more of a factor in sales figures, and people who buy manga overseas do not have an opportunity to buy Jump in a physical format, at least not anymore. I believe Viz did publish Jump in a physical format on a monthly basis at one time. But they don't do that anymore. It wasn't very profitable over here. So this information is very meaningful because we see there is a market for people who read freely available comics and still go on to buy the volumes. This was not always the case. As a longtime webcomic reader, I have heard a lot of webcomic artists complain about the difficulty of getting the people who read their comics to engage with them financially. That can be very frustrating for someone who wants to make their living by creating stories through art. Now, there can be a lot of factors to that, not the least of which is the fact that Jump Plus is a very professional publication. The artists are of exceptionally high quality, the stories are well told, and they clearly engage with an editorial staff that keeps the artist from wandering too far off topic and catches many of the kinds of errors that really creep into your generic webcomic. Furthermore, with the fallback position of a large publishing house to back them up, the writers can take a more relaxed publishing schedule. They publish twice a month. And the chapters they publish are about 20 pages each, which is comparable to a chapter of a manga in Jump. Now that adds up to about 40 pages a month, which is still more than the average webcomic puts out, but these artists are probably working with assistants who help them streamline their creative process, so the workload is probably not incomparable. We have seen a lot of resistance to online comics in the American publishing industry. A lot of mainstream artists view them as very lowbrow, and again, not entirely without foundation. The early days of webcomics were not that impressive. Not that impressive artistically, not that impressive narratively. Although, in the narrative sense, there's certainly a lot more to recommend webcomics, at least some webcomics, than a lot of mainstream comics. And of course, some mainstream comic artists have gone independent using webcomics or similar models to promote themselves. The most obvious example is Phil and Kasia Folio, who write Girl Genius, a very good comic that I highly recommend and I have already discussed on my channel elsewhere. However, even mainstream comic producers have started to look at the internet as a distribution model. Some of them have gone over to Substack, some of them have looked to Kickstarter. The resistance of the old guard has crumbled in the face of the economic realities of the American comic book market, which is not healthy. Now, I remember saying back when Jump was initially released for free on the internet for the public to read, that I did not think this was a business model that American comic publishers could copy. American comics are obsessed with their own continuity. There's nothing wrong with that per se. However, the Jump model was to lock away all of the content more than a month old behind a paywall. Jump can do that because it cycles in new content on an extremely regular basis. I'd say at least one new series premieres every month. Old series are wrapped up and shelved at roughly the same rate, depending on how things are performing. This means that a new reader can always find a new story for free that is just starting up that can lure in new readers and potentially get them interested in other titles in Jump. Now, there are certainly long-running titles in manga. One Piece runs in Jump, and it has over 1,000 chapters of ongoing narrative by a very talented storyteller. With that much backstory, and no retcons, no time travel, no timeline resets, and an ever-expanding cast of highly important characters, One Piece is a very daunting story to get into. In fact, many new readers may choose to pass on it for that fact alone. And if the data presented in Super Eyepatch Wolf's video is any indication, many new readers are choosing to pass on the title for just those reasons. Add all the other complicating elements that I mentioned, which are quite common in American comics, and I don't think switching over to this model will help them, any more than it's helped One Piece find an audience. However, Jump Plus is a very different beast. Not only does it have a more relaxed publishing schedule, but it is free to be much more experimental. It makes a lot of room for short-running series. Some titles will be plotted out for 5 or 6 or maybe even 3 months and only published for that time period. By the same token, Jump Plus just ran a 500-page one-shot, offering readers a crazy, insanely long story with what was, by all reports, a very strong finish that audiences can read for free and then decide if they want to purchase for themselves and immortalize on their bookshelves. The incredible flexibility and very forgiving publishing schedule that Jump Plus offers its artists is a very strong asset and one that I think American publishing could adapt to its own needs. American comics are very interested in shared universes. That's all well and good. It is a great publishing trick. It is a great way to get your audience to explore titles they otherwise wouldn't, and with the potential to do very focused, very sculpted, shorter stories that do not have to go on forever and ever, or even big one-shots that tie into your connected universe in new and exciting ways, American publishers can combine the strengths of their own narrative structures with the business advantages of Jump Plus. Or, if nothing else, they could use it to experiment and try to diversify their publishing line something they could desperately use. Regardless of all of this, While I don't think that the original Jump app was a signpost for how American publishers could revitalize their industry, I do believe that there is a lot of value in examining Jump Plus and seeing what exactly they are doing there, and asking ourselves how it could be applied to existing American publishing companies or American publishers who are looking to break into the comics market, whether from some other publishing wing or simply as a startup in and of itself. The internet is the ultimate route for distributing art. It's never going to replace physical art, but it does offer a lot of opportunities to get eyes on that art that might not otherwise. And I think that Jump Plus is showing us one of the really effective ways to do that. Maintain the safeguards of traditional publishing on quality of art and storytelling, but accept that the distribution model may need to change, at least in the initial phase. But maybe I'm wrong. Let me know what you think about the Jump Plus model down in the comments below. There's a like button and a subscribe button down there you can use as you see fit, and I will talk to you later.